What is up, everyone? How are we doing today? It is March 26, 2026, and today I'm going to be going over today's price action. The two trades I took, one was a beautiful long at the start, and the second one was a continuation long. And yeah, let's just get right into it. All right, so coming into the day, my bias was slightly bullish, and the reason being is number one, on the higher time frame right now, we're in the 4 hour gap. We are currently respecting this 4 hour gap right here, and we also had an SMT right here. So as you can see, NQ ended up sweeping this, and if we go on to ES, we can see it did not. And so knowing this, I'm just going to look for continuation longs, right? We had London highs, which is a great draw on liquidity. I believe, let me pull it up right here. Yeah, so our London high was such a great draw on liquidity. This is just a major swing high too. Even if we took off our kill zones, we can clearly see that um, we had this high in this gap. So overall, this is just a great draw on liquidity. We also did have some draws lower. I believe we were very close to some major lows. Yeah, so we did have this change in state and delivery right here. So either I would have loved to see price come down to this change in state and delivery. And how many points is that away? Let me just double check. Yeah, so that was about like 200, 300 points. So, I mean, it was very far, but one thing I did want to see was this intermediate low get swept, and that is exactly what we did. As you can see here, we had this low, we swept that, and now I would love to see continuations up to the upside. So this is market open. This is 9 a.m. candle, and as you see, we have this SMT that I mentioned before. If we hop on ES, you can clearly see that we did not end up taking that out. And so right now it is clear that I'm looking for longs, whether it's a continuation up to that London high, 15-minute, or even I think we had a 30-minute. Yeah, we had a 30-minute unfilled gap too. And what ends up happening is if we go over to 9:30, all right, we're in the 1 minute time frame, and at market open, we can clearly see that we're displacing lower, right? We're immediately pushing down, and right now we obviously have a major draw. We have this low right here, which is exactly what I want to see swept before we start pushing up. And I believe this 5 minute, yeah, it was our 5 minute low too, it was our major low. And what ends up happening is we just keep continuing down. Oops, I just went out of replay mode. Yeah, so we keep pushing down, and eventually we end up sweeping that, and now I'm looking for an inversion to the upside. As you can see right here, we did create this change in state and delivery, and we didn't have anything on the 1 minute, but I believe, yes, it was a 30-second inversion. So we took this, let me just make sure my OBS is recording. Perfect. So yeah, this was the inversion we ended up creating, right? As I said, we took out that major low. We were clearly respecting this bullish candle, this bullish 4 hour gap. And now I just want to see price go higher. And right after that, our next 30-second candle ended up inversing that. And this is exactly where we took our entry. And after we displaced through that candle on the 30-second, what I'm looking for is my main draw. And earlier I forgot to mention that I always check my kill zones, so other sessions, and as you can clearly see, we did have London lows, which was our closest major draw on liquidity, and that is exactly what I targeted. And as you can see, this is our London high right here. Let me mark this out for you. London highs, perfect, kill zones off. So we have our London highs, and that's also where we had our swing high off of this 1 minute. We had this bearish for value gap, so you could have taken a break even at this intermediate high. However, I just wanted to see price push up. I had no break even in play. And what ends up happening is I have my entry right here, target at the London highs, stop loss at the change of state and delivery, which is right here. And what ends up happening, price just plays out and TP just gets hit. We completely displaced through this bearish gap, and we ended up taking profit. It was a 1.76 hour trade. Completely beautiful, super easy, super A plus. We had every conviction we had. We had our bullish SMT. We were respecting our higher time frame gap. We were very bullish coming into the day, and we had our major low right here, which we ended up sweeping, and we took an inversion off of the 30-second all the way up to London highs. This is a perfect A plus trade in my books. This is exactly what I would do. I would take this trade every single day of the week if I had the opportunity. And yeah, it just presented itself super nicely, and there's nothing much really else to say. Now, after taking this long, I was going to be done for the day. However, I still wanted to see price push up. If you can clearly see, we were still very bullish, and I would have loved to seen price run all the way up. We had so much low resistance liquidity just not being swept at all. And I really wanted to see price continue higher. So I was looking for another continuation entry. And so after that move, we ended up creating a 5-minute gap. And this is something I really wanted to see. In order for me to continue upwards, I would love for price to retrace into that gap and then take it all the way up. Now we did create this 5-minute gap on NQ. As you can see, it was right here. I'll mark it out. So here's our 5-minute gap. So I'm waiting for price to retap into this and then take continuations. So now it's just a game of being patient and waiting for this gap to get hit. And as time passes on, we ended up tapping into this gap, giving us confirmation that price wants to go higher. And now I'm just going to look for an inversion. And as you can see, we actually created this 1-minute inversion fair value gap. This was super clean. This was an amazing, also like B plus scenario in my head. Maybe not A plus, just because I love the 930 volatility. That first trade was in like 2 minutes of market open, and that's what I love to see the most. We are accumulating in the pre-market, manipulating down either to a major swing low or swing high, like we did. We took out that major low and then we push up higher. We displace all the way up. That's my favorite A plus setup. I'm taking that every single day of the week. And in this setup, we were just looking for continuation longs just because we were so incredibly bullish and we wanted to see that happen. And after we retapped into our 5-minute fair value gap, I was looking for an entry and we ended up creating a 1-minute inversion fair value gap. And so right here, this is where I ended up taking my profit, or sorry, this is where I ended up placing my entry. Now I originally had my stop loss at the 5-minute fair value gap. I know, like holy stop loss, it's fat, huge, but that's just where that wick was, and that's what I originally had it as. And we ended up having our take profit at the London highs, which I believe if I go, oops, not Ethereum. Here we go, 15-minute chart. Right here, this candle was our London high. This is exactly where I had my take profit, and I'm incredibly bullish. This is what I want to see get taken, right? Now, if you wanted a break-even point, you could have easily had it at this internal high, which also happens to be our 5-minute bearish fair value gap. Now, if you wanted to break even, this would have been the place to do it. And I didn't have a break even because I thought we were just going to get stopped out and have a break even trade, just because I thought price would maybe just either end up hitting our break even, coming down, maybe wanting to retest a gap or something, and then pushing up, because we did on ES have this 15-minute gap, which yes, it did get swept. However, we created an intermediate low. And that is something which I was kind of nervous about, because I'm like, okay, maybe if we don't want to push up to London highs right now, we might end up pushing back down to that 15-minute and then going up. So what ends up happening is we inverse the gap. We had our entry, and I believe I showed you this candle, which is our London high. I'll pull up kill zones just to make sure. Yeah, perfect. That was our London high. That was the target. This is a 1-to-1 trade, I believe, or 1-to-1.5. I mean, it wasn't that far of a move. It was 83 points to the upside. I thought that was completely doable in the session. Price action was already pushing up, and I really thought it was going to be good. And let's just play it out. Look what happens. We are literally just straight chopping. At this point, we would have hit break even and we would have gotten stopped out immediately. But literally just, this is price action. We are not doing anything. We're just creating barcode. And I'm going to be the guy to say it. Yes, I know price action sucks, but as a trader, you have to learn how to play in crappy price action scenarios. You know, not everything's going to be perfect. So don't just blame price action for everything. Yes, it was shit in this situation, but that's the part of the game. You know, you have to learn how to read. You have to learn how to adapt, because not all market conditions are going to be perfect. And in this case, we just really didn't have anything good. We just kept straddling along in this. And for my stop loss, it was so huge. And since we weren't just displacing through this, usually when I enter a trade, I like to be in there for a few minutes max, because that's when I know, okay, if we're inversing this gap, I'm clearly bullish. I'm clearly wanting to see price take this high. That is my model. Usually if price doesn't get hit within the first few minutes of entering a trade, then I really don't have too much conviction for it afterwards, because I want to see price get displaced immediately. I want to see it quick. I want to see big moves, big candles. I don't want to just be stuck in this range. And literally, I was in this trade. It was 30 minutes. Like you can see, we were just not doing anything whatsoever. And at this case, after seeing price just keep pushing down and just being in literal barcode price action, I decided to manage my risk and I moved my stop loss up. And the only reason I moved my stop loss is because on ES, we still had this 15-minute gap, and I was scared that or not scared. I was just making sure that, okay, maybe price is going to retap this gap. Maybe we're going to trade back into our discounted 15-minute and then continue higher. So that was also a possibility. That was not something I really considered at the time, just because I was so bullish. And now looking at the charts, I'm on this trade for 30 minutes. And as I can see, I'm looking at ES, I'm looking at NQ, and we just see that, okay, I have this 15-minute gap on ES, and the way price is going right now, maybe we're just going to end up tapping back into this gap and pushing up. So in this situation, I managed my risk. I actually had really good risk management, and I moved my stop loss. I moved it from that original bottom of the wick to the body of the candles. And honestly, this saved me, because what ends up happening is we just ended up chopping for a while, and then we finally got stopped out. This is 37 minutes in a trade. That is not super ideal at all. Honestly, I would have loved to hold. I would have been in this position all day, but it just wasn't worth the risk. We are clearly not doing anything. Price clearly doesn't want to go up yet. So I'm assuming price is just going to either tap this 15 and then continue up, or we're just going to go up immediately. And those are the two scenarios. And after seeing price just not move and be pretty stagnant, I'm like, okay, scenario 2 is probably going to play out. So that's why I moved my risk. And this was honestly really good risk management. You have to be very reactionary, because sometimes price doesn't do what you want it to do. So in this case, it made sense for me to move my stop loss. And after getting stopped out on this trade, I was looking for another re-entry, and I was just waiting for this 15-minute to get swept through on ES. And eventually, like I said, price ended up sweeping that 15-minute for value gap on ES, and now I would love to see continuations. And we also did create this other bullish SMT. As you can see, ES did not take this out, and NQ did. So I am looking for an inversion to the upside. I originally had that second long right here, but it didn't play out. We wanted to get a retrace back into a 15-minute gap, and that's exactly what we did. We also ended up taking out this change in state and delivery, which was our major low. As you can see, it was our clearly lowest point in a long time. And after we finally swept that, we created a 1-minute gap right here. And I was just looking for this to get inversed. And next candle, our entry was just so shot. This candle actually spiked up all the way here, like within a second. If we would have gotten a closure maybe here, okay, that was something I would have loved to take in. We had our stop loss here. You can take profit, just a 1 hour trade. But our candle just shot up so fast. And by the time I was going to enter this trade, we like pushed up so fast. And I would have loved to catch this move, but our entry was just so shot, like especially with this being our low. It just didn't make sense. And this all happened so fast, and we immediately just spiked up. So we kind of just got cooked on that. We didn't really have a fast entry, or we weren't fast enough. And that's just like the blatant truth, I'm going to be honest. But that was just like the last idea. And after that, I got off. Like, there wasn't really anything for me after. It's already 11, past 11 at this point, and I really don't like conditions after 11. We get really choppy PA, and we just don't have as much volatility because it's lunch hour and everyone's off. So yeah, after that I just got off, and that was kind of like the main ideas. And just to go over it real quick, that first long, we had a beautiful trade, took that. Amazing. And that second idea, the continuation longs, I love that idea. I really wanted to see that play out, and I actually really thought it was going to play out. However, it did. We were in that trade for like 30 minutes, and as I realized like halfway through the trade, oh, we have this 15-minute on ES, and maybe price wants to retrace there and then continue higher. So that's when I managed my risk. I moved my stop loss a bit, because eventually, because in my head, either we were just going to displace immediately to those highs after that inversion, or we were just going to continue lower until we tapped into that gap and then take an inversion to the upside. So that second trade didn't end up playing out. We managed our risk go, so we did not lose much at all. And then the third trade was that long idea that I did not take. That moved so fast. We swept our major lows on that change of state and delivery. We created it, and we also had a bullish SMT, but it just moved too fast, and I honestly just did not get my entry. And the candle that inversed the gap was such a high displacement that our entry was kind of cooks. So that's why I was kind of iffy. I was honestly waiting for price to drop down a little bit just so I could get a better entry. However, that did not happen, and it just hit TP. But it is what it is. So we won one, and then we lost one today. Overall, a really good day though. The second trade, we did not have much risk at all, so very, very good. overall positive for the day. So honestly, that's all that matters. But I'm glad that my skills are getting better. Even though we lost a trade, it's still really good to understand like how it's going to move because we have the right idea. It's just sometimes price wants to take an extra step. We knew price was going to go to those highs. And what ends up happening is that just because we inverse that first gap into that 5 minute on NQ, we saw that 15 minute on ES that did not get tapped into. So sometimes it would have just ran straight up to TP, straight up to London highs, or sometimes it would have just ran down to that 15 minute on ES. In this case, it did. Honestly, it's all probability, but it is what it is. You can't control everything. I wish I could call the market makers and ask, oh, why did you run down instead of just displacing higher? I wish. It doesn't work like that though. But yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I provided some sauce for you guys, a lot of insights. Usually some losing videos are good where I talk about trades because, because it's really good to understand like the overall thought process and my idea with the trades because obviously like I can catch a lot of bangers and a lot of wins and 930 opens, but you really don't get to see too much information and how I can improve upon it. And that's something a lot of you guys probably have to work on, making sure you're reviewing your old trades. Why did this trade lose? Was there another idea? Did price want to do something else? So just make sure you journal, make sure you go over it because the more you look at your old trades and see why they fail, the more you're going to learn, the more you're going to grow, and then the better trader you're going to be. But I think that's all the information I have for you guys today. Hope you guys have a beautiful rest of your day. It's Thursday. Hopefully tomorrow we'll end the week with a bang. And yeah, have a great day. If you like this video, please like, comment, share, subscribe, follow. Anything you can do helps tremendously. I will catch you guys. Peace.